Good morning. Welcome to the Celtic Way morning briefing live. It's Wednesday, March the 15th. I'm Tony Haggerty at Haggerty10 on a Twitter handle, and I'm joined today by Aidan Macdonald at Aidan C. Macdonald on the Twitter handle. How are you, Aidan?
Yeah, I'm good, Tony. How are you?
I'm good. First and foremost, before we do anything, just do what we always do. First thing, our housekeeping, and I say thank you to everybody who has subscribed. If you haven't subscribed, click that button, www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe, and subscribe to the Celtic Way website and support top quality journalism covering the club you love, and it will cost you £2 for 2 months of unlimited access to everything that's written on the site. Aidan will tell you there's some wonderful stuff on the site, is there not, Aidan?
Yeah, so obviously, you have big interviews from yourself, Tony, tactics pieces, columns from people like Kevin McKenna. There's one that's just went up this morning on Joe Hart. So, yeah, whether it's tactics, columns, interviews, we've got you covered. So get yourself involved if you've not already subscribed.
Indeed, thank you very much. And we also say thank you to SENECA, and everybody knows by now that the Celtic Way morning briefing is now sponsored by SENECA Medical Group. And SENECA are the number one hair transplant company in Europe, and they offer innovative hair restoration treatments. And you can find out more about SENECA via the links in the description of this video. Now, Aidan, something causing consternation amongst the Celtic supporters this morning, and it's once again the omission of Kyogo Furuhashi and Ryo Hatate from Hajime Moriyasu's Japan squad. Now they've got a double-header friendlies against Uruguay and Colombia coming up, and neither Celtic player has been called up, but Daizen Maeda remains. Daizen Maeda scored in the World Cup finals, of course. What's your first, foremost, and your thoughts to that? Are you disappointed for the guys?
Yeah, of course, just like I was with the World Cup squad, that it's a shame they've not been involved. Maybe selfishly, from a Celtic point of view, it's good they're going to get a bit of a rest, but the fact the manager's spoken about before, he wants players to go and play international football, sort of expand their football and horizons, etc. So it would have been nice to see. They've obviously both been in excellent form for the whole season, but particularly since the World Cup break, it's as a wee bit surprised they're not involved. But yeah, I guess from a Celtic point of view, it's two less players that could be away getting injured. So if we're being selfish about it, Tony.
Now, this is what Moriyasu said. I've watched all the Celtic games and seen what they've accomplished and their presence in the team, but there's no bar to clear to be called up. It's a comprehensive decision. We think about the level of the league and various other factors when making the decision. For this squad, we focused on the squad from Qatar as well as some new players. There will be other call-ups. As I said, we are trying to build the strongest team possible ahead of 2026. In order to do that, we're taking a wide view of how to build a team. As I think we all agree, Rio and Kyogo would absolutely be able to contribute to the team, but this time I wanted to try out some different players, and that's why they weren't selected. Tough talking Moriyasu there, Aidan. First and foremost, well, he's had a bit of a pop at the league, the quality of the league as well, hasn't he? And by the sounds of that.
Yeah, I mean, I know obviously quite a good sort of chunk of Japan's squad do play in the top five leagues. I think when we were talking to Dan Horowitz when the World Cup squad was announced, or when it was just before it was announced, he had kind of stated that the majority of their players did play outside of Japan, and a good chunk of them were playing in sort of Spain, Germany, England, etc., France. So I'm sure he does have a good pool of talent to pick on. What I would say is I would wonder how much, and this probably applies to also the World Cup squad, but I'd wonder how much of that squad had, played 6 Champions League games, which obviously Celtic had. But look, it's his decision, obviously, and Japan did do quite well at the World Cup, so I'm not going to question that the guy doesn't know what he's doing, but it's just a wee bit of a surprise. I mean, particularly Kyogo, the sort of goals he was hitting, we discussed it on Monday when I was on, Tony, and 26 goals this season. No, none of them are penalties. He's been doing phenomenal, and I'm just surprised. They wouldn't even want him as an option off the bench. But yeah, so Maida's obviously the sort of Celtic player that he's favouring at the moment out of the three of them.
The Brown Warrior comes in and says this: I think the World Cup selection simply came down to Kyogo's form in Europe. Celtic were among the top sides in the group stage for chances created, yet our main striker failed to convert any of them. Do you agree with that? That was based on Kyogo's omission from the World Cup, Aidan.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it could have played the part in his World Cup omission. Look, I think we both said it at the time that it was frustrating. The Champions League chances, we probably don't want to go into that too much, Tony, because we sort of did discuss that in depth. But yeah, Kyogo did miss a few chances in the Champions League, as a lot of the players did. Pretty much everybody attacking, pretty much every attacking player missed a good opportunity across the 6 matches. So I guess I might have played into the World Cup reason for him not being selected, but the fact he's not been selected now, I would say we're probably past the maybe his performances in the Champions League. He's also been scoring big goals against Rangers and that, etc. So
Jill Pill saying he definitely doesn't rate our league. That seems to be the vibe that's coming from a lot of people in the retro Celtic, saying disappointing for the players, but Celtic don't need any interference due to meaningless internationals. Now, do stress that is a double header of friendly internationals, Aidan. So I guess Japan's loss for that one is Celtic's gain, because those two players can concentrate on the run-in and the important games. But you know how much stock the manager, Ange Postecoglou, stresses on international football. But I guess the two players can focus on Celtic, which is a good thing for Celtic supporters and the manager.
Yeah, and he's obviously said before that he does want players to be going to play in international football, but I'm sure in his head he's thinking, well, that's Kyogo and Hatate wrapped up in cotton wool for a couple of weeks before the Ross County game, which is the first game back after the international break, sorry. So the fact, Taylor not being called up, which we might touch on, but Kyogo not being called up, Hatate, and somebody like Jota, etc. That's obviously, he's not in the Portugal squad really at the moment. So that's 4 really key players that are going to be able to train, I'm sure, a good bit and work hard over the next couple of weeks. But after the Hibs game, they'll also get a bit of a break, which at this stage of the season, you wouldn't be wanting to lose any of those players with injuries. So I'm sure the manager will be disappointed for him, like he was for the World Cup squad. But deep down, I think he'll also be like, well, it's not too bad, because they are going to sort of be able to get a bit of a break as well.
Steve McGrory comes in. Morning, Steve, and he says, without the travel and match fatigue, it will keep Rio Hatate and Kyogo Furuhashi fresh for Dingwall on April 2nd, so it's all good for him. He says that way. And Brown Warrior comes back in and says, Ange Postecoglou won the J League and selected key players from the J League to come to Celtic and play in Europe, so there's a double-edged sword there for the Japanese manager. Brown Warrior says,
just signed the J League Player of the Year as well.
Correct.
And Awata. So yeah, obviously, like the Japanese manager doesn't seem to rate the SPFL based off his comments you've read out there, Tony. I mean, that's his prerogative. That's up to him. But I would say it's a bit harsh, probably, his comments on the league personally.
Yeah, but I believe that they have a few rounds of international friendlies, but come November, I think the serious stuff starts, doesn't it? And Tam Mack coming in saying Moriyasu could still change his mind in November. My reading of that is that they will get called up, and it'll be for the more serious one, because I think he's saying they can contribute to the team and he knows what they would bring to the table. He's just trying to experiment with other players first before they kind of get a settled team for the more competitive fixtures that are coming starting in November.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that would make a wee bit more sense. I think, obviously, if Celtic hopefully do win the league this season, the Champions League campaign you've played at least 2 or 3 games, maybe even more than that, actually, depending when the international break is in November. I've not actually checked that, but so that you'll be very much in the spotlight again. You would imagine Hatate and Kyogo will be sort of key components and be playing most of those matches if Celtic are in the Champions League. So that should probably put them in the spotlight for a place in the squad come November.
Now, Beach Boys comes in. Japan's manager's words about the league is true, and I worry as these players are proud and loyal to their country, and if they need to move on to get international call-ups, they will. Just spread mass panic amongst the Celtic supporters. Why don't you, Beach Boys, that Rio Hatate and Kyogo Furuhashi will leave Celtic because they're not getting international call-ups? It is a possibility, isn't it, to be fair? But I think I'm reading the manager's comments here, and yeah, maybe he doesn't rate the league, but he's not ruled it out completely. He's not shut the door on either player being called up, and I think, as I say, reading into it, that they will get called up because they are playing at the top of their game at the moment.
Yeah, they've obviously both been phenomenal this season. Both of them could be contenders for sort of overall player of the year in the league, also the Celtic player of the year. But I do think that they will be called up eventually, because it's no matter how good the options are in the Japanese squads. And look, I know they do have a good squad. They had a good World Cup, taking some big scalps against Spain, against Germany as well. But I would imagine he would want at least in his squad to be able to have the possibility of bringing Kyogo and Hatate off the bench eventually.
Beach Boys comes back in and says, why would they get called up when they didn't make the World Cup squad and they'll still be playing in a poor SPL? They're just not in his plans. End of argument for him. But nah, I'm not buying that, Aidan. I'm not buying that.
Kyogo has been selected before,
Yeah.
we should say, since he's been at Celtic. That's why people were surprised that he wasn't in the World Cup squad. I think Hatate, he obviously was not selected, I don't think he's had a professional cap for Japan as far as I can remember. He might have only had one or two. Obviously, when he first came in, there was a thing about were the Japanese pros are going to miss the game at the 3-0 game against Rangers last season in February. It ended up being There was only one picked. He obviously then sort of famously came back and still somehow managed to play whatever it was, 10-15 minutes in that game. But Hatate wasn't picked on that occasion, so he probably wasn't as much of a surprise outside of maybe Celtic fans. I think Kyogo was the sort of one that everybody was expecting because he had been selected before, so he obviously has been in the manager's plans at some point, is what I would say.
Keimatsu came in and says exactly, they will both see action before the end of the next World Cup cycle. That's a given. But right now there are other players ahead of them. And I think there's a school of thought amongst the Celtic supporters saying if there's other players ahead of them, then Ange Postecoglou should sign those players as well. Even whoever they are. That's another argument as well. But getting lots of comments in about it. It's John Potter saying it's important that Celtic players don't believe the standard of the league will impede their international careers. Fan focus might be Celtic, but the footballers value international football. And so does the Celtic manager. He values it greatly. So I think there'll be lots of discussion with Ange Postecoglou as well on that too. And, I'm not panicking per se. Yeah, you're disappointed for Hatate and Kyogo Furuhashi, but it's not as if the manager said they're never going to get called up. I just think that once the serious stuff starts in November, and also there's 2 or 3 international breaks before then, I'm sure both guys will be called up, especially if they continue their form, and especially if Celtic win the league and go into the Champions League. And before November, as you say, there'll be many Champions League games for them to prove their worth, if they haven't already.
Yeah, I mean, obviously playing at that level does give you a big platform, probably equal of most of the top 5 leagues in terms of, coverage, etc. that you would get. But yeah, I'm sure they will have futures in the Japan squad. They've both still got plenty of years ahead of them, and I think, like you say, the point you made about November, I think there's probably a good chance of both of them being called up if they keep continuing on this sort of current vein of form that they're in.
Now, Aidan, moving on from Hatate and Kyogo, but still in the same vein, Greg Taylor was omitted from Steve Clarke's Scotland squad. And this is what Steve Clarke said, which was a strange one. He said, I've had a chat with Greg. It really is a Celtic issue, more than for me to comment on. He's carrying a little injury. He will probably benefit from a rest rather than coming away with the national team. But Celtic should elaborate on that a little bit. That's news to us all, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a bit of a strange one. Obviously, Taylor had been out with an injury, but he's been back and he's played in the most recent game. So I was a bit confused by that. When I first seen Taylor wasn't picked before Steve Clarke's press conference, I just kind of assumed, as much as Greg Taylor's been excellent from Celtic, there is a lot of options in the fullback positions. It's sort of been one of the complaints that Scotland seem to only producing really, really good fullbacks. Can we do with a few of those players sort of dotted across different positions? But Robertson's in there, Tierney. I know Tierney will more play sort of the left centre back role for Scotland rather than the left back role. But you'd imagine if it was to come down to it, Clarke would be happy to play him there. There's also Aaron Hickey, who's playing for Brentford, mostly on sort of the right-hand side, but did play on the left-hand side for Hearts when he was there. So that's another option. I just think, I just immediately thought, there's just other players in front of him. That's just the way it is. Even though Greg Taylor has been in quite a lot of Scotland squads when Tierney and Robertson have both been available, but I just assumed it was maybe just a squad too far for him, maybe. But then when Steve Clark made those comments, I was quite surprised, to be honest. Particularly if Greg Taylor is going to play against Hibs on Saturday, which, unless we hear any different from Andrew in his press conference, I think we'd imagine that would be the case, given that he's just went and played at Tynecastle. So, yeah, no, it was like a weird one, Tony, to be honest. I definitely wasn't expecting him to say that.
I'm looking forward to the manager's press conference on Friday, because I'm sure he might address that in the kind of inimitable way that Ange usually does address stuff. When Patrick McLaughlin comes in and says Ange keeps his injuries injuries in-house, he'll tell us if he wants to. Yeah, he does indeed. And Peak Week G comes in and says he's taking a selfish, unrepentant position, less chance of injury if players don't get selected for national squads. That's fair enough. Tam Mac, a wee message for Clark, talking utter rubbish. So there you have it. But lots of comments coming in. Taylor didn't get picked because he's playing in the SPL, says Beach Boy. In fact, it's the Scottish Premiership, Beach Boys, to give it its correct title. It's not the SPL. Not been the SPL for a while now. So Scottish Premiership, tongue-in-cheek there, clearly, with the laughing emojis. And Brown Warrior saying Kieran Tierney has hardly had a sniff at Arsenal since his injury. His form has slumped a bit too. If you're picking form players, then surely Taylor gets the nod. I don't disagree with that. I think Taylor's had a terrific season.
Yeah, Taylor has had an excellent season for Celtic. Steve Clark, I would say, those kind of, sometimes he's been criticised for it, other times it has been effective. He does kind of have a sort of core group of players he will pick. I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but he does have a sort of, he will add players in here and there, obviously, but there is a group of guys that always are kind of picked for the squads. They may not always play, but they're always sort of in there as options, regardless of whether or not they've been playing a lot. Once again, I'm not trying to tell Steve Clark how to do his job, but it's guys like Tierney have been getting picked quite a lot from when he was.
You didn't tell him
from like when he sort of first went to Arsenal, when he had his injuries and he was just coming back. I know he's not played a lot this season. To be fair, like Zinchenko's been Zinchenko, sorry, to give him his proper name, has been an excellent signing for him. So it's kind of, I can see why he's not been in the team, but Steve Clark has always kind of had a group of players that he's always went to, and Tierney, Robertson, etc. Just happened to be part of that. I think for the overall squad, there is only two players that play in Scotland: Callum McGregor and Ryan Jack, I think it is. So yeah, it just kind of he's obviously just looking elsewhere for options at the moment. I mean, another one who's doesn't usually play a lot for Scotland, but has been included in a lot of the squads is David Turnbull.
Yes.
Obviously, not played as much for Celtic this season. I think we've discussed his record's still pretty good given his sort of lack of minutes, but he's not involved either. The only Celtic representation is Callum McGregor, and then obviously your boy as well, Tony Ralston's not involved.
Yes, then Patrick McLaughlin says it's not Clark's place to announce any of Celtic's injury doubts. I did, when I saw those comments yesterday, I was quite surprised that you'd gone public with that. I don't know if Ange would be chuffed at that. I'm saying that.
Unless he's picked up a knock, though. I mean, he didn't he got injured against Hearts. I would imagine the team probably had Sunday off. So unless he'd been in the squad that was all set and done, and then he's picked up an injury on Monday or Tuesday morning at training, Tony, I don't know, but it will be interesting to see what Ange says, and then if Greg Taylor then does play against Hibs on Saturday, is there something else going on there? But like you say, Ange's presser will no doubt be interesting.
Celtic fanatic since 1880, he says, I think the Bull, as in Turnbull, might go in the summer, especially due to having a lack of games. And Beach Boys saying national squads are becoming more and more like club squads. Doesn't matter if you play cup football, you still get picked. That's a fair comment too. But yeah, it's been a kind of mixed bag, isn't it, for Celtic players in terms of international call-ups, Aidan, but lots of fans are kind of like Pete G. they like the fact that they're not called up because it lessens the chances of injury. Steve McGrory saying the two guys, Rio Hatate and Kyogo, being hauled around the world for two not meaningless friendlies, but friendlies nonetheless against Uruguay and Colombia, then they're not affected by any travel fatigue and all that, and they can concentrate. So there's lots of pros and cons, isn't there, in terms of the guys that are being called up and not called up.
Yeah, I mean, particularly with the Japanese pros, you make a good point that it's not just the actual matches and whether or not they get injured, there's the element of travel and the fatigue factor. So, yeah, I think we're obviously going to always look at things from a Celtic point of view. So, there's a chance of players not getting injured, that particularly if it's for friendlies are going to play. I know Scotland aren't playing friendlies, I should say. It's obviously important European qualifiers for Euro 2024, but then we're obviously always going to want to go for that option because the team plays so much football across the year, 55 plus 60 games between when the season starts and it ends. So if they can get a sort of bit of an extended break in there, then it's probably going to be good because it's also going to be pretty much full pelt when they come back. 10 league games left, at least one more Scottish Cup game potentially too. So potentially maybe 12 games overall. It's going to be a lot of football to be played. So yeah, somebody like Taylor, Hatate and Kyogo, who you'd imagine will be involved in 90% of those games and the majority of the minutes, if they can get a bit of rest, then it's probably not a bad thing.
Bearing in mind that hectic schedule, the run in, the business end, call it what you like, when the trophies are handed out, Joe Hamilton's a wee bit more succinct with his thoughts. I don't care about the national team. Is that any national team, Joe? Or Scotland, Japan, or whoever? You just sort of say don't care about national. But there's a lot of club supporters feel like that, Aidan. I go with the fact that I still think it's the highest honour that a player can achieve, representing their country. The Celtic manager feels that way too. He's been a manager of his national team, and from day one, he's actively encouraged it. So I think inwardly I'll be disappointed for Kyogo and Hatate and the likes of Greg Taylor, but he'll be saying to them, right, guys, your focus it can now be solely on your club and what Celtic are trying to achieve. And you mentioned that there's 10 games to go, possible 2 games left in the Scottish Cup. So what would that be, 12 if they get to the final? The countdown's on, Aidan, isn't it, for the most important part of the season, which the manager said they want to finish stronger and better.
Yeah, and I think in terms of Ange, he'll be able to see both sides of it. Excuse me. He's obviously got the sort of added insight of the international point of view, given the fact that he was Australia manager for a few years and had to sort of pick. I think he said it himself that he had to pick from quite a sort of diverse squad in terms of having to go to different leagues, different options, and look at who was strongest in each area. Just because when he was sort of the manager Australia didn't have probably the strongest squad, or maybe as strong a squad as they have now. So I think he will probably sympathise somewhat with why the Japanese manager, if we use him as an example, because also the Greg Taylor one's a wee bit different if there is a knock there, why he's sort of saying what he's saying, but he will also be disappointed. But then he will, on the flip side, be thinking that's key players that are going to get a rest. So, but like you say, there's a lot of sort of different sides to it, and just hope that the Celtic squad's in the best shape coming back from the international break. Obviously, there's plenty of players that will be away. So fingers crossed there's no injuries, because that's the last thing you need at this stage of the season, Tony.
Vincent O'Brien saying Celtic fans not worry about international call-ups. Celtic are going for the treble. I think a lot of Celtic fans are feel the same way. K Matsu says, while I personally love to see the Celtic boys get into the squad, the truth is he wants Japan to win the matches, and other players are simply better and more experienced. And that's a fair point as well, Aidan.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We're obviously not going to pretend to be experts on the Japan squad. I mean, I don't know about you, but I watched all Japan's games during the World Cup, and that was probably the most I'd kind of really seen of the Japan national team outside of the odd time, like the football during the Olympics, etc., which we know is a sort of under-23 squad. So it's a lot of guys that wouldn't usually be called up when it's sort of qualifiers or major tournaments. So, yeah, I'm sure Japan do have a sort of good range of players in there available. My only thing was I was just surprised. I'm not saying either would be a guaranteed starter. I just thought he would want them in the squad. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Off the bench.
I alluded to this earlier. PPG's came out so if they're better, is there any chance of Celtic signing them? I was talking about a lot of Celtic supporters are feeling that way as well. So it's I mean it's always an issue that's going to divide fans' opinion if they care about national teams. Aidan, first and foremost, lots of Celtic supporters are just club and club only, and that's their prerogative to feel like that, isn't it? The players that are not called up, Celtic are, as the Vincent O'Brien there said, they are going for the treble, and I guess that's a motivation for these guys to sort of show those national team managers that maybe prove a point or two, or show them that they were wrong for their temporary omission. Let's call it that.
Yeah, and I mean, if you can give added what's the word I'm looking for? Can give you extra motivation to players who are already performing really well, that can only be a good thing when it comes to this sort of business end of the season, as you were calling it. So, yeah, if that helps them kick on even more, and Kyogo adds another, I don't know, 7, 8, 9, 10 goals, Hatate another few assists and man of the match performances, then that can only be a good thing as well, Tony.
And Celtic obviously play Hibs at the weekend. Aidan will continue the countdown to that, and both on Thursday and Friday. We just like to sort of mix it up a bit and talk about different things, but we felt that this was a relevant topic for discussion today. I know others want it more Celtic related, but it is Celtic related, isn't it, Aidan? Because Celtic players are involved with their national teams. But yeah, we will speak about Hibs in greater detail. Got to just kind of chunk it out, Aidan, over the week. When it comes to International Week, we all kind of run for cover and think, oh, what are we going to speak about? But there's never a dull moment with talking about Celtic and issues concerning Celtic. But yeah, I think surprise is probably the most the kind of emotion of the day, isn't it, Aidan? With when you're talking about the Japan international squad selection.
Yeah, I think it is. There is obviously the sort of context of they weren't selected for the World Cup, which we've also already mentioned. So maybe I think we're probably both more surprised by that admission, just because obviously you can take quite a big squad to the World Cup nowadays, 26 players or whatever it was. So we thought it might have been included. But yeah, I think your sort of point you were touching on about November, Tony, where it coming to the maybe more important games for Japan, they could be called up by then, and obviously they'll have had more football under their belt. So yeah, surprise is probably the sort of best way to look at it, but maybe not as big as the surprise we got when he was announcing his team back in November.
And you look at what's coming up, Aidan. Obviously, we get Hibs game Saturday, then it's international break, but then you get into April. You've got 2 Celtic Rangers games, one a Scottish Cup semi-final, and one league game at Celtic Park on April the 8th. Lots of stuff to look forward to, hasn't it? As the season counts down.
Yeah. There's a lot to look forward to, Tony, between now and after potentially in the Scottish Cup final, the sort of start of June when that match is. There is going to be plenty of football, and yeah, the team's in a really good place. Obviously, already won the League Cup, potentially on course for a treble. So, it's a positive time, Tony. Just hopefully we can stay injury free between now and end of the season.
Speaking of the Scottish Cup semi-final, I believe that you might be writing a newsletter, which could be out at some point today. Is that right, Aidan? You're talking about why it's beneficial to get Rangers in the semi-final of the Scottish Cup rather than the final. Is that right? Something along those lines?
Yeah, there's a piece that's been worked on for that. I don't know fully if it's going to be today's newsletter, but it will definitely be out over the next couple of days if it's not today. So, yep, keep your eyes peeled for that.
Yeah, if you're subscribed, that'll drop in. You subscribe to the newsletter, you'll get that at usually 5 o'clock most days. So look out for that in the coming days. Young Aidan telling us his big verdict on it's great to get Rangers in the Scottish Cup semi-final as opposed to the final. But there you go. But yeah, busy time coming up. Business end of the season, international break. We all kind of lots of people who love their club football, Aidan, don't like international breaks. But hey, it's part of the calendar. We have to negotiate it. We have to deal with it, and we will deal with it as it comes along, won't we?
Yeah, exactly. There has been a few international breaks since we've been on doing this, and you always get through them in the end, and then by the time it gets to the end of them, you're desperate for club football to come back, which whets the appetite even more this time of year, Tony.
Excellent. Well, that's been half an hour. We've discussed Kyogo and Hatate's omission from the Japanese squad, Greg Taylor's omission from the Scotland squad due to injury. We'll find out more about that probably on Friday when Anja addresses the media. Looking forward to that. But have a wonderful Wednesday, troops. We'll be back again tomorrow for a terrific Thursday, no doubt. But thank you for all your comments. Keep them coming in every day. We really enjoy the toing and froing and the interaction. And we thank you for those who have subscribed. And if you haven't subscribed already, then we'll urge you to do it. Visit www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe, and it'll cost you £2 for 2 months of unlimited access to everything that's written on the website. You subscribe to the Celtic Way and enjoy everything that's on there. www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. And we also say thank you to SENECA. And as you all know by now, the Celtic Way morning briefing is sponsored by SENECA Medical Group. And SENECA are a #1 hair transplant company in Europe, and they offer innovative hair restoration treatments. And you can find out more about SENECA via the links in the description of this video. But thank you for tuning in. We'll talk Hibs Thursday and Friday, as we count down to the international break. Cheers, guys. Take care, Aidan. Thanks for your contribution today. Enjoy that. All the best.
Cheers, guys.